I'm James Rosone.
And I'm Miranda Watson. We're the husband and wife writing team that created the military thriller Monroe Doctrine series and the military sci-fi series The Rise of the Republic.
We have some additional content we'd like to share with you guys today, and we hope you'll find it informative and entertaining. We're planning to create more videos similar to this in the future.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get started.
Chapter 29. Battle on the Flanks. 24th October 1990, 502nd Infantry Regiment, south of Al-Mutalath, Saudi Arabia. General Peters monitored the engagement taking place on the western flank of 1st and 3rd Brigades. From the sound of things, the fight was going well, with the Iraqi divisions being torn up pretty good. He was concerned, however, about what was about to unfold on the right flank with 2nd Brigade. The 2nd Brigade had inserted 3 battalions along the highway 9 miles north of Al-Eshash. The 3 battalions of the 502nd Infantry Regiment, which comprised the 2nd Brigade, were further broken down into company-size and platoon-size positions, all focusing on the defense of the Tau and Dragon weapons systems. Each position had a designated pickup zone to which the unit would move after engaging the enemy and make good their extraction and movement to their next fighting position. Every Tau and Dragon position was carefully chosen, with overlapping fires integrated with artillery target reference points. Mines were positioned at the end of each engagement area. Each kill zone was also covered by small arms fire to include the M60 machine guns and squad automatic weapons, or Saud. Small arms would not engage until Iraqi infantry dismounted and attempted to move towards the Dragon and Tow positions. These tactics had been tested extensively at the Joint Readiness Training Center and National Training Center. This was a fight the division was ready for. The final defensive line was located around Al-Uqila. No, Mercy 6. Sabre 6, over. Sabre 6, no Mercy 6. Go ahead. No Mercy 6, we've stripped his forward recon element pretty good, so he has no eyes out front. He's moving with 2 regiments abreast and the 3rd Regiment following. I think his left flank regiment is going to try to slip through the rough terrain in that big wadi on the west side. His lead elements are in the vicinity of Hafirat al-Aida, over. Sabre 6, good copy. No Mercy elements are moving into position and have it now. See you when you're back up. Roger. No Mercy 6, good hunting. No Mercy 6, Lieutenant Colonel Dick Cody, had 21 AH-64 attack helicopters under his command. Cody had graduated from West Point in 1972 and had been commissioned as a transportation officer but concentrated on Army aviation. By the time he'd graduated from flight school, the U.S. Army had been pretty much out of Vietnam, so he hadn't gotten the chance to fly there. His entire career up to this point was in Army aviation, and he was qualified in almost every rotary wing aircraft the Army had. Eagle Attack 6, No Mercy 6, over. No Mercy 6, Eagle Attack 6, go ahead. Eagle Attack 6 was Lieutenant Colonel Mark Curran, who commanded the other attack battalion in the 101st, the 3rd Battalion, 101st Aviation Regiment. He had 18 AH-1F attack helicopters under his command, along with 21 scout helicopters, the OH-58 Kiowa. The AH-1F was armed with 16 Tau missiles with a range of 3,000 meters. Eagle Attack 6, did you monitor Sabre 6 about the western approach? No, Mercy 6 asked. Roger, I have it covered. I'm committing half my force at a time as he has little maneuver room. We'll keep constant pressure on him. What might get through will be able to join whatever gets through you, and the grunts in the vicinity of where your road comes out of the mountains north of Al-Eshash. But I don't think anything's going to make it that far. Over. Attack 6, I think you're right. We're going to commence engaging in 5 mics. Over. No Mercy 6, Eagle Attack 6. Sounds good, we'll do same. Out. The AH-64 Apache helicopters were each armed with 16 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. The AGM-114 was a subsonic laser-guided missile with a range of 6.8 miles or 11 kilometers. It was capable of killing the heaviest of tanks. Besides the AGM-114 missiles, the AH-64 also carried a 30mm chain gun with 1,200 rounds in the nose. Both attack battalions moved into firing positions behind the covered and concealed infantry positions. As the Iraqi lead elements moved with caution towards the mountainous terrain to their front, they did not expect what hit them. Spectre 6, No Mercy 6. Slide your elements to the west and engage the flanks of the follow-on battalion. How copy? No Mercy 6 asked. Good copy, Spectre 6. Break, Bearcat 6, No Mercy 6. No Mercy 6, Bearcat 6, over. Bearcat 6, engage lead elements on my command. No Mercy 6, Bearcat elements are standing by. Paladin 6, No Mercy 6. No Mercy 6, Paladin 6, over. Paladin 6, engage the left flank of the lead elements on my command. Roger. No Mercy 6, moving into position at this time. No Mercy 6 waited until each of his subordinate companies had moved into position. He knew the scout aircraft would have their laser designators painting the enemy vehicles already. Once he was sure they were in position, No Mercy 6 gave the command. All No Mercy elements, this is No Mercy 6. Engage. Still 3 miles from the protection that the mountainous terrain might offer, the first of the Iraqi tanks exploded. At first, no one could understand why the tank would have exploded, but the other tanks and vehicles immediately closed their hatches and buttoned up their vehicles. Not only was the visibility for the following vehicles obscured by the dust from the first vehicles, but now visibility for each vehicle was further reduced from being buttoned up. It seemed to the Iraqi commanders that as a vehicle would come out of the dust of the vehicle in front of it, they would be destroyed. Some vehicles on the flanks were being destroyed as well. In a matter of 30 minutes, the lead brigade on the right flank had lost just under 300 vehicles to the No Mercy battalion. The Iraqi brigade on the left flank was faring no better, as he was also still short of the protection offered by the terrain, and was losing vehicles, with his air defense vehicles being the first to be destroyed. Dragonslayer 6, Eagle Attack 6, Colonel Curran called. Attack 6, Dragonslayer 6, over. Dragonslayer 6, when you've expended 75%, let me know so I can have Archangel 6 relieve you. Over. Roger, Eagle Attack 6, we are 50% expended at this time. Roger, Dragonslayer. Break. Archangel 6, Eagle Attack 6. While the Dragonslayers were engaging elements of the 51st Division on the Iraqi Division's left flank, Archangel's Company C, 3101 Aviation Regiment, had been sitting in a loiter position with engines at flight idle, saving fuel. Eagle Attack 6, Archangel 6, over. Archangel 6, send the little birds forward to relieve Dragonslayer elements. Be prepared for battle handoff in 1-5 mics. Roger, Eagle Attack. Little bird elements are launching. From the loiter position, 6 little birds came to full engine RPM and began to lift off. They remained low, skirting the hillsides so as not to silhouette themselves in the morning sun. As they came within view of the enemy formation, each little bird communicated with the AH-1F they were supporting, advising the attack aircraft on the enemy disposition. Gradually, all the Dragonslayer little birds were replaced, and Dragonslayer attack helicopters were replaced on station by Archangel birds. The Dragonslayers returned to the FERP that had been established to the southwest outside of Al-Thamid. Both No Mercy 6 and Eagle Attack 6 were prosecuting the deep battle plan for the 2nd Brigade commander, Colonel Dean Anderson. Colonel Anderson was an infantry officer, but in his younger days he had also been an Army aviator before the aviation branch had been formed. The 2nd Brigade had 3 infantry battalions of the 502nd Infantry Regiment, an artillery battalion, an engineer company, and an air defense company. Reinforcing his brigade was a corps engineer company and a battery of 155mm artillery that corps had provided. Arriving in sector, the engineers were put to use right away, placing obstacles across the road where they could be covered by fires from the Taus and Dragons. Fast-cam minefields were planned as well, and they would be on call for the 155mm artillery to fire. Regardless of which avenue the Iraqi forces chose to come down, they were not going to have an easy time of it. The 1st Battalion of the 502nd was positioned so Alpha Company would be the first to hit the Iraqi lead battalion on the left flank. The plan developed by LTC Jim Donald was to engage the lead battalion once it was in the kill zone, then hit them with artillery while his troops disengaged and moved to pickup zones. They'd be airlifted to their next position, which already had additional ammunition, and water pre-positioned behind Bravo and Charlie companies. Lieutenant Gentry was the scout platoon leader for the 1st Battalion, 502 Infantry. He was from Alabama and had probably learned to walk by following his father as he snuck through the woods, hunting out of season. Theirs was a poor family, and hunting was how his dad put meat on the table. Sharecroppers, as they were referred to, still existed in the Deep South, both black and white. Only difference today was that most of the land was owned by a billionaire living in Seattle that had never gotten his hands dirty in his life. He'd made a fortune in developing a computer software program, and now was buying up any piece of land he could find. Of course, he let the poorest work the land, and he took the profits, paying them a pitiful wage. "First strike 6, Hunter 21 over," Lieutenant Gentry radioed. "Hunter 21, first strike 6. "India, over," answered the colonel's radio operator. "First strike 6. "India, it appears that lead elements were hit hard by the birds. The follow-on battalion is passing through to take the lead. Birds appear to be departing." "Over," Lieutenant Gentry reported. "Roger. Hunter 21, good copy. First strike 6, India out." Colonel Donald had been listening to the transmission. The scout platoon was screening along his left flank, ensuring that the Iraqi force didn't attempt to slip around to that side and play havoc with the pickup zone on that side of this defense. The worst thing that could happen was for the enemy to discover the pickup zone and hit it with artillery as the aircraft were withdrawing the soldiers. A little over 1,000 meters down the road, once it entered the rugged terrain, was an open area on the right side of the road. This was designated the first of several kill zones. The battalion had positioned the 3 rifle companies on the right flank in the rugged terrain and positioned its 20 Tau vehicles on the left flank. The plan was for the infantry companies to engage first with the Dragon weapon system, and when the enemy turned towards them, the Tiao weapon systems would engage. The rifle companies were positioned a click apart, so the first company would engage, then withdraw to their respective pickup zone and depart while the next company commenced engaging, and so forth. The engagement range for the infantry and Dragon systems was 600 meters downhill, and for the tow weapons a little over 1,000 meters. This would be a short, violent engagement. Artillery would be called to cover the disengagement of the infantry, and the Taus had a road that they could use to run parallel to the main highway. This route would take them to their next engagement area, which was just to the front of the 2nd Battalion, 502nd Infantry, which had a similar battle plan. As the Iraqi column came together to move on the highway, its pace slowed. This was not the most ideal terrain for a mounted force to move through. They were gun-shy and had every right to be so. "First strike 6, Anvil 6, over," the Alpha Company commander called. "Go ahead, Anvil 6, said Colonel Donald, who had taken the hand mic from his RTO. Donald was in his jump talks, co-located with the Tau weapons. His main talk was already located at his last defensive position, and the TACCP was at the next defensive position. First Strike 6, lead elements are approaching EA Alpha, Anvil 6 transmitted. Each of the rifle companies had established company engagement areas within the battalion's overall engagement area. When Alpha Company reported the enemy in EA Alpha, all elements would know they would be engaging shortly. Anvil 6 just had to sit and wait, looking over the ridge his company was occupying. In a low crouch, he went from position to position and offered words of encouragement and patience to his soldiers. Waiting is the hardest part of an engagement. Your mind begins to think too much. You wonder what it's going to be like. Is it going to be like a Hollywood movie or a nightmare? What is it going to feel like to kill someone or to be killed? The soldiers had been trained well to think that they were destroying metal machines moving down the road, and not to think of the human cargo those machines were carrying. But eventually, humans would empty from those destroyed and burning machines. And then what? Each soldier was lost in their own thoughts as they watched the enemy armored vehicles move past them. First Strike 6, EA Alpha is occupied. Request permission to engage. The Alpha Company commander transmitted. Alpha 6, fire! Instantly, 20 Dragon missiles rained out of the rugged terrain on the right flank of the Iraqi column, and 19 vehicles exploded. The Iraqi force immediately turned towards the first and began engaging with the vehicle-mounted 14.5 mm KPVT machine gun and the 7.62 PKT machine guns. The 14.5 mm KPVT was a heavy machine gun that chewed up those positions that it could find. As the vehicles turned to face their attacker, 20 Tau missiles leaped from their launchers and made the short flight to slam into the BTR-60s and other vehicles in the convoy. As those vehicles exploded, the Iraqi soldiers became confused about which way to fight. Some vehicles attempted to push forward to drive out of the kill zone, only to run into mines that had been placed across the road. As quickly as the attack had started with 35 vehicles burning, it stopped. The Iraqi soldiers breathed a sigh of relief as they looked at the carnage that surrounded them. Their relief was short-lived, as artillery rounds, making the sound of freight trains, could be heard growing louder each second. The airbursts were devastating to anyone that wasn't in a vehicle or enjoying overhead cover, and there was none of that. As the artillery suppressed the Iraqi forces in the kill zones, soldiers of Company A, 1st Battalion, 502nd Infantry, moved to pre-planned pickup zones and began loading the UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters that would deposit them in their next fighting positions further south. This engagement was over for them for now, as Bravo and Charlie companies also had engagement zones to execute before the Iraqi forces would meet the 2nd Battalion, who had a similar battle plan. It was going to be a long day for the attacking Iraqi forces. Chapter 30. Spiritual Needs. 20 October 1990. Battle Force Talk, Al Murabba, Saudi Arabia. October in Saudi brings in cooler temperatures, so during the day it is very comfortable at 90 degrees. Nights are cooler in the 60s, but it feels colder. The sky remained clear, and green vegetation was evident where it had been lacking in the summer months. The men of the 3rd Battalion, 327th Infantry Regiment, had remained in their positions around Al Murabba since the heavy fighting against the 7th Iraqi Division. Thankfully, the battalion had only lost a few soldiers, with another handful wounded and sent back to the rear. The biggest problem the battalion had after the fight was the burial of the dead Iraqi soldiers. Almost immediately after the last shot was fired, the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Corey, received a visit from the battalion chaplain. "Sir, the chaplain is outside and needs to talk to you," the battalion executive officer, Major Bill David, said. "Send him in," Corey said. turning his attention away from a map he had been studying in the battalion operations tent. "Sir, he has a local with him," David said, looking around the Toki to indicate that it might be best not to have a non-US person seeing the maps and activities in the Toki. "Okay, let's see what they want. Do you know?" Corey asked, heading for the doorway. "I best let him explain things to you," David said, not looking happy. Moving outside into the afternoon light, Corey had to take a moment to adjust his eyes, even as he put his sunglasses on. Corey had a detached retina, and bright light hurt most days. As he adjusted his eyes, he saw the battalion chaplain and an Arab, whom Corey quickly recognized as the Imam from Al-Murabba. "Chaplain, what's up?" Corey asked as he walked up. Both the chaplain and the Imam approached Corey. Placing his hand over his heart, the Imam said, "Assalamu alaikum." Corey immediately answered, "Wa alaikum assalam," and shook the cleric's hand. "Sir, the Imam came and got me right after the fighting was over." "How did he know where to find you?" Corey asked, concerned as the chaplain could be a loose cannon at times with his good deeds. Chaplain Sumbler had been an infantry officer in his early years, but had left the military and become an ordained minister, although Corey couldn't figure out what denomination. The military recognized 240 different denominations, and Chaplain Sumbler was ordained in one. He'd attempted to explain it to Corey, but all he understood was that it wasn't one of the big six. "Sir, I introduced myself to him when we moved into the area and told him where I'd be if he needed anything," the chaplain said. Corey and Major David exchanged looks, and the message to Major David was clear if unspoken. Get the chaplain under control. "Okay, so what's the problem?" "I'm sure there's a problem," Corey said. Sumbler never came to him with solutions, only problems. "Sir, in accordance with Muslim tradition, he wants to know when we're going to bury the dead Iraqi soldiers. First, we have to wash each body and then—" "What the hell are you talking about? We ain't washing every dead Iraqi body out there. Are you nuts, chaplain?" Corey looked at the chaplain, and then at the Imam. The interpreter that had accompanied the chaplain started to speak in Arabic when Major David cut him off. "Sir, it's Muslim tradition that the dead should be washed and then immediately buried, preferably before the end of the day, with their hands folded in prayer on their right side and their head towards Mecca. I assured the cleric we would honor their traditions," Chaplain Sumbler said. "You did what?" Corey asked, about to explode. "Chaplain, there are 3, maybe 400 dead Iraqi soldiers out there. We aren't washing one of them. If he wants them washed, he best get the locals to start scrubbing because I'm not having our soldiers do that. Look out there." Corey pointed to a tank ditch that had been dug before the fight due east of Al-Murabba. "Yes, sir," Sumbler said, as he and the Imam looked to see where Corey was pointing. "Do you see those Iraqi prisoners that are being moved out of Al-Murabba?" Corey asked. "Yes, sir," Sumbler replied. "Those prisoners are about to start gathering up the dead and tossing them in the tank ditch, which, when we have them all in there, will be covered up by a bulldozer as soon as I can get one here from Division. Now, if you and the Imam here want to wash everybody, then I suggest that you and he get the locals to start washing them as the prisoners drop them in the ditch. But not one drop of our bottled water is to be used. Do I make myself clear?" Corey said, attempting to maintain his composure. The Imam still didn't understand what was being said, but he knew this wasn't going the way he had seen it unfolding. "Sir, they have to be placed on their right side with their heads towards Mecca. It's the traditional way for a Muslim to be buried," Sumbler argued. "Well, you're in luck, chaplain, because that tank ditch runs east to west, and Mecca is south of us. If you and the Imam want each body on its right side with its head towards Mecca, then I suggest you and he get down there. In fact, no, that isn't right. You, chaplain, are in charge of the Iraqi burial detail. You will report to Captain Mulford and take charge of the Iraqi prisoner detail. I will have Captain Mulford provide a security detail to you. You and the Imam here will supervise the prisoners in placing each body in the ditch in accordance with the Imam's instructions, but not one U.S. soldier will touch one of those bodies. Do I make myself clear? Corey said, slowly moving closer to the chaplain. Sir, I understand, but I really don't think I should be in charge of this. As the chaplain, I meet the spiritual needs of the soldiers, not take charge of details, Sumbler objected. Well, let me ask you something, chaplain. If we were in the States, would you not meet the spiritual needs of our soldiers' families if a soldier died in a car accident? Corey asked. Yes, sir. And aren't you in charge of our memorial service for our soldiers that were killed in this fight? Yes, sir. And aren't burial services meeting the spiritual needs of the soldiers? Yes, sir. And don't you meet the spiritual needs of all soldiers regardless of their denomination? Corey needled. Yes, sir. And aren't you a commissioned officer in the United States Army, governed by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which says you are to follow all lawful orders issued by your superiors? Corey asked. Major David was attempting to hold back his laughter. Yes, sir. So you just answered your own question. You are meeting the spiritual needs of those Muslim soldiers by being in charge of the burial detail. God does not discriminate between our soldiers and the enemy. You need to have a little faith, chaplain. I would suggest you get down there and take charge before they start tossing bodies in that ditch, or else you're going to have to haul them out and start over. General Schwarzkopf said we would not win the war and lose the peace. I intend to support that position. I'm sure the Imam and the locals will agree that we're keeping the peace by honoring the dead Iraqi Muslims. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, chaplain. Is there anything else you need to discuss with me? At this point, Corey had a smile on his face. The Imam was smiling as well, though he had no clue about what had been said. Chaplain Sumbler did not smile, but saluted, and left with the interpreter and the Imam in tow. As they watched the trio move off, Major David said with a grin, Sir, Chaplain Sumbler does not look happy. Bill, in the future, Chaplain Sumbler will learn that if he has a problem he's bringing to me, he best have a solution as well. He'll learn, Corey said as he moved back into the talk. Chapter 31. Her Majesty's support arrives. 24th October 1990. CENTCOM Forward HQ. Military Technological College. Muscat, Oman. Sir, he's here, General Schwarzkopf's aide said, standing in the doorway. Good, show him in, Stormin Norman said as he stood and moved around his desk. He was excited about meeting the man coming through the door. Sir Peter de la Billière, newly appointed commander, British forces, stopped 5 feet from General Schwarzkopf, came to attention, and in stoic British fashion rendered a smart salute, palm out. General Schwarzkopf, British forces reporting for duty, he said. Schwarzkopf returned the salute and added a broad smile as well. And very glad to have you, sir, Schwarzkopf said, dropping his salute and extending his hand. Sir Peter de la Billière was a solid, very fit officer. He'd started his military career as a private in the Durham Light Infantry in 1952. In 1956, he'd been accepted into the Special Air Service, or SAS, and had, over the course of his career, seen combat action in Aden, Sudan, and Malaysia. Now he commanded all British forces in support of Operation Desert Shield and Storm, if it came to that. At this point, General Schwarzkopf was almost convinced that the storm was coming. After they exchanged handshakes, General Schwarzkopf motioned for them to take a seat in 2 overstuffed chairs. As they conducted some initial small talk, the aide came in with a pot of coffee and served. Once the aide left the room and closed the door, Schwarzkopf revealed his feelings. Sir, I am truly glad to have the assistance of you and your government at this time. Truthfully, I do not expect Saddam to pull out peacefully. He has right now about 27 divisions arrayed across Saudi Arabia and the UAE. His air force has been able to hold their own against ours, so we have air parity at this time. His air defense systems are far superior to ours, an area that we've been remiss in the past and are paying for now. He has no naval forces outside of the Persian Gulf, but has, along with Iran, managed to control the strait with mines. We've found a way through as long as he doesn't change the minefield. Your forces are certainly most welcome, General Schwarzkopf stated. General, we are proud to serve as part of your coalition. My staff is waiting to give you a brief of what our capabilities are and what we're bringing to the fight. They have coordinated a presentation with your staff and are in the conference room to give that presentation at this time, Sir de la Billière said. Well, General, let's not keep them waiting, Schwarzkopf said, standing in motion for Sir de la Billière to lead the way. Little was said as they moved down the hall to the conference room, which was full of officers from both nations. Already present were General Horner, USAF, General Yeosok, USA, General Boomer, USMC, and Rear Admiral Henry Maus, Jr., Commander U.S. Persian Gulf Naval Forces, along with their primary operations officers. On the other side of the table sat officers from Great Britain, to include Sir Michael James Graydon, Commander, Strike Command, and his deputy, Sir Kenneth William Hare. Major General Rupert Smith, Commander, 1st Armored Division, and Rear Admiral Roger Charles Lane Knott, Royal Navy. As they entered, an American officer announced, "Attention," and everyone stood. Sir de la Billière, this is your show, so sit here, please, at the head of the table, General Schwarzkopf said, motioning to the chair. Thank you, General, de la Billière replied, taking the chair. The briefing officer, a British brigadier general, was already standing behind the podium. Gentlemen, this briefing will focus on the British forces that will be participating in this operation. First slide, please, he asked. The slide appeared on the large screen in the front of the briefing room. Gentlemen, this slide shows the Royal Air assets that will be participating in this operation. Some are in country at this time, and some are inbound as I speak. There will be 17 squadrons of Panavia Tornado fighters, with each squadron having 15 aircraft. The Panavia Tornado is a multi-purpose role fighter and can employ the JP-233 runway buster, he said before General Schwarzkopf interrupted him. Excuse me, General, but what is the JP-233? He asked. Sir, the JP-233 is a runway buster two-stage bomb consisting of 2 canisters. The HB-876 is an anti-personnel canister with 215 mines, and the SG-357 concrete buster has 30 bomblets. These ignite first, rendering sizable craters in the runway, and then the HB-876 ignites, causing problems for anyone who attempts to repair the runway. Nasty little things, sir. Thank you for explaining that, General, Schwarzkopf said. Please continue. Yes, sir. There are 3 squadrons of Sepcat Jaguars with 12 aircraft in each squadron. They are equipped with the Pave Spike laser designators to support tornado strikes. Generally, we employ 2 Sepcat aircraft with 4 tornadoes in each strike package. The brigadier paused to see if a question was coming. When none did, he picked up the brief. In addition, sir, we're bringing 4 squadrons of Hawker Siddeley Nimrods for maritime reconnaissance and 1 squadron of our Handley Page Victor heavy bombers, he stated. Excuse me, General Horner said, but what's the payload of conventional weapons on the Handley Victor? Sir, they're capable of carrying 36 1,000-pound bombs, the brigadier said. Thank you, Horner replied, making a note on his notepad. Are there any other questions about our air package? The brigadier asked. After a moment and no questions, I will now cover naval assets at sea at this time. Next slide, please. Unlike the air asset slide, this slide had a "to be continued" note at the bottom. Turning to Schwarzkopf, the brigadier was pleased to see the look on the general's face. Sir, the brigadier explained, you will note that we are bringing a sizable force. Her Majesty's ship Ark Royal has a full complement of Harrier jets, along with Westland Lynx helicopters. The Westland Lynx helicopters are capable of supporting both land and naval operations. I know you're especially keen on our mine countermeasure vessels, of which we are bringing 6. HMS Dulverton and HMS Bicester are the oldest vessels, and HMS Atherstone and HMS Herworth are the newest, both having been commissioned in the 1980s. Again, he paused for questions and comments. Turning to Sir de la Billière, General Schwarzkopf said, "Sir, when the time comes, we're going to be relying heavily on your minesweepers. This is one area that our Navy has overlooked for far too long. We are in serious need of upgrades." "You will get no argument from me on that point, General," Admiral Maus said with a smile. "Continue, sir," Schwarzkopf directed. "Sir, lastly, I would like to highlight the 2 Oberon-class submarines. They will be in support of SAS operations in the area. These are older diesel boats. They've been modified to support the SAS in their over-the-beach operations. This concludes my discussion of naval assets, sir. What are your questions?" "I see you've brought support ships on your slides, sir. I thank you for bringing support ships to cover your fleet," Schwarzkopf said. "Supplying our own fleet was going to be a problem, and this will make it much easier on us." "Sir, RFA Argus is a primary care or hospital ship, as I believe you refer to them. RFA Diligence is a ship repair vessel serving the fleet. RFA Fort Grand is a fleet replenishment ship. RFA Regent is an ammunition resupply ship. RFA Olna is a fleet tanker." Interrupting the brigadier, Schwarzkopf said, "Okay, I got the picture. You've covered the bases quite well. I rest assured that you can support your fleet. What's next?" "Sir, with your permission, I would like to cover the ground forces," the brigadier said. "Please do," Schwarzkopf said. "Next slide, if you please." Quickly the slide came on the screen, replacing the slide with the British support ships. "Sir, we're bringing the 1st Armored Division with these units. The 7th Armored Brigade has 2 armored battalions, the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards and the Queen's Royal Irish Hussars, each with 57 Challenger tanks. Also, there is an infantry battalion, the Royal Staffordshire Regiment, and a reconnaissance squadron, first the Queen's Dragoon Guards." The brigadier stopped to take a drink of water, though the pause was really more in anticipation of the possibility of a question. When no questions were asked, he continued, "The 4th Armored Brigade has 1 armored battalion of Centurion tanks and 2 infantry battalions. Divisional troops have 1 regiment of reconnaissance forces, the 16th Fofifth the Queen's Royal Lancers, and 3 artillery battalions. The 4th Regiment Army Air Corps has a combination of Gazelle and Lynx helicopters for anti-tank, reconnaissance, and courier duties. What are your questions, sir, about the 1st Armored Division?" "Covered it very well, Brigadier. I have no questions," Schwarzkopf said. "If you have no questions, sir, next slide," the brigadier called, pausing to allow the audience to study the slide. "Sir, these units will provide supply and services, transportation, medical support, and engineer work in the rear areas. They will be the first units arriving to prepare the bases for the 1st Armored Division when it arrives. The 1st Unit, 52nd Port Squadron Royal Corps of Transport, should be arriving tomorrow by air, along with the 174th Provost Company Royal Military Police, and the ships are 1 week away. Sir, this concludes the briefing if you have any questions." Schwarzkopf, always the gentleman with foreign officers, congratulated the brigadier on a fine presentation. He had known most of the information already, but felt this would be an opportunity for those American officers seated in the gallery to learn about their British counterparts. Standing, Schwarzkopf said, "Gentlemen, let's all move to the officers' mess for lunch." No one complained about the quality of the food that was awaiting them, and all moved quickly out of the room. Chapter 32. Strike Brigade. 24th of October 1990. 2nd Brigade Engagement Area, Al-Majrdeh, Saudi Arabia. This fight had been going on for 2 days now. Everyone was tired. The Iraqis weren't pushing hard, almost fearful of leaving an engagement area once the fight there was over, since they knew that another engagement area was waiting just ahead. Colonel Anderson sat in his vehicle and monitored the radios on the brigade command net. He had a second radio that he could use to monitor the communications of any single battalion as well, so he had a good mental picture of what each battalion was experiencing without having to nag the battalion commander for a sit-rep. As he listened, it appeared that Alpha Company of the 1st Battalion was in the pickup zone and ready to be extracted. It would take one extraction of 10 Black Hawk helicopters to get the entire company of infantry soldiers out of the pickup zone and in the new position. This was only half of the total Black Hawk fleet working for him. While aircraft were extracting Alpha Company, 10 more aircraft were standing by to extract Bravo Company, who was about to engage the Iraqi forces. The 4th of the 101st Aviation Brigade would have to do. An hour later, the last of 1st Battalion was being extracted, having hit the Iraqi column 2 more times. "First Strike 6, Strike Force 6, over," Colonel Anderson heard over the radio. The 2nd Battalion commander was calling the 1st Battalion commander. "Strike Force 6, 1st Strike 6, go ahead." "First Strike, passage of lines is complete. I have it now. Over." "Roger. Strike Force 6, good hunting. First Strike out." Colonel Anderson smiled to himself. The 1st Battalion had successfully handed the battle off to the 2nd Battalion, who had his own engagement areas established. These were delaying positions designed to engage and wear the enemy down. The main defense for the sector would be between Al-Eshesh and Al-Majrdeh, a distance of 9 kilometers, where the attack helicopters from the 2 attack battalions would concentrate their fire. The infantry battalion's final defensive positions were 10 kilometers to the south, in the vicinity of Gamra, where the mountainous terrain began again. The kill zone was 10 by 10 kilometers, flat, with few places for a vehicle to hide. "Strike 6, Strike Force 6, over," the 2nd Battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Chesley, radioed. "Strike Force 6, go ahead," Colonel Anderson responded. "Strike 6, we're commencing our engagement on his lead air defense systems. It appears he's pushing them out to the front and flanks. Scratch 2 Zulu Sierra Uniform 234, over." "Strike Force 6, that's whittling them down to size. Strike 6 out." MG Daler Zogby, commander of the 51st Infantry Division, was facing his worst nightmare. Ever since the division had left Al-Jadid, it had been hounded by the American attack helicopters. American A-10 close air support aircraft had also strafed and bombed his lead regiments. The air defense was able to keep most of the close air support aircraft at bay, but some of the damn helicopters were operating outside the range of his air defense weapons. He turned to his operations officer and screamed, "Get me Colonel Aziz now!" A few minutes later, Colonel Aziz, the air defense commander, arrived with a Russian advisor, Major Adam Smirnov. "Tell me, Colonel, why can't you keep the American attack helicopters off my vehicles?" Zogby asked, in a less than pleasant tone. "Sir, the American attack helicopter has a superior range over our air defense systems. He can fire his missiles from 8 kilometers away, and the range of our air defense missile is 4 kilometers, Colonel Aziz said, pleading his case. "Are you telling me that the SA-6 missiles do not have a range to reach the American attack helicopters?" General Zogby questioned. "Sir, the SA-6 missiles are all located about the Corps headquarters and supply depot as well as the tank park. They have the range, but these helicopters are flying below an acquisition height. The SA-6 cannot track them," Colonel Aziz stated. "Well, we have to come up with something because they are destroying our regiments," General Zogby complained. "General, may I make a suggestion?" Major Smirnov asked. "Please do, Major," Zogby encouraged him. "Sir, currently the ZSU-23-4 in each regiment are traveling 200 meters apart and about 400 meters behind the lead elements of the regiment. They are ineffective as the Americans are outside the range of their weapons system. Same for the SA-9 missile systems. What if we pushed them forward with the reconnaissance elements, instead of holding them back to cover the main body? At worst, they would be just as ineffective, and at best, we may be able to provide better coverage as we move into the mountains, where the range advantage for the American attack helicopters will be greatly reduced, Major Smirnov recommended. General Zogby thought about this proposal for a minute, and finally said, "Do it. And, Colonel, you will be leading your weapons with the recon elements. We have got to get the American helicopters stopped." Major Smirnov thought Colonel Aziz looked a little pale when they left General Zogby. Colonel Anderson positioned his tactical command post to the west of Gamra on a high mountaintop, which gave him clear visibility of the entire engagement area. To the north, he could observe the forward progress of the 51st Iraqi Division, not by seeing vehicle movement through the passes, but by the rising columns of black smoke from burning vehicles. The division commander must be more afraid of Saddam than us to continue to attack through this ground with our attack helicopters pounding him, Anderson thought. "Strike 6, no mercy 6, over." Picking up the hand mic from his radio operator, Anderson replied, "No mercy 6, strike 6, over." "Strike 6, no mercy elements are on standby just waiting for your call." "No mercy 6, roger." Anderson had assigned the western side of the engagement area to No Mercy elements and the eastern side to Eagle Attack. Eagle Attack had already reported in that their elements were just waiting for the order to attack. Scout aircraft from both units were shadowing the progress of the 2 regiments, or what was left of 3 regiments moving south. It appeared to the scout pilots that the regiments of the 51st had been so badly mauled that they had become intermingled into a steady stream of traffic moving south with no real combat formation. They were a bit surprised to see the air defense weapons in the lead as well. "Strike 6, No Mercy 6, over." "Go ahead, No Mercy 6, Anderson said. "Strike 6, Little Birds are reporting that on coming, forces are leading with Alpha Delta Alpha systems, over." Anderson and his operations officer, Major Herbert, exchanged looks. "What do you think, sir?" the major asked. "I think the attack aircraft have eaten their lunch so bad that they've moved the ADA forward to attempt to keep the attack aircraft off their backs. I'll bet he has almost no ADA to his rear," Anderson said as he grabbed the hand mic. "Eagle Attack 6, Strike 6, over." "Strike 6, Eagle Attack 6. "Eagle Attack, do you have eyes on the enemy formations?" "Affirmative, Strike 6. "Roger. Where are you seeing his ADA?" "Over." "Strike 6, it appears that his ADA is leading and on the flanks, over." "Roger, understood. Stand by. Break. No Mercy 6, Strike 6. No Mercy 6, Lieutenant Colonel Dick Cody, was sitting on the ground with his flight of 21 AH-64 Apache helicopters in a wadi 10 kilometers from the engagement area. "Strike 6, No Mercy 6, over." "No Mercy 6, Eagle Attack. 6, I want you to engage the rear of the formation. Do not engage the ADA weapons, but leave those for the strike elements to engage. Engage the follow-on forces and let the strike elements take out the ADA vehicles. How copy?" "Strike 6, No Mercy 6. I have a good copy." "Strike 6, Eagle Attack 6. Roger, I like this." Eagle Attack had the AH-1F Cobra helicopters with the tow weapons system, and thus the shorter range versus the Hellfire system on the AH-64 Apache aircraft. Anderson continued to watch the forward elements of the oncoming force proceed into the engagement area. He could see the lead elements from his observation position, but not the follow-on forces because of the dust from the lead elements. Patience was needed at this point. The planning was done, the troops had been briefed and knew what had to be done. Now it was a matter of waiting while the enemy came forward. Waiting and watching was one of the hardest things in a battle. Captain Hilliard commanded Company A, 3rd of the 502 Infantry Regiment. He was a graduate of Austin Peay University and commissioned through the ROTC program. He was a prior service soldier, having spent 2 years enlisted working up to corporal before he was accepted into the Green to Gold program. His whole time in the Army, aside from schools, was with the 101st Airborne Division. He considered it his home. His soldiers loved him, as he had walked in their shoes as an enlisted soldier and now did it again as an officer. His company had been occupying a position on the forward edge of Gamra. His company frontage was about 1,000 meters across. He knew the enemy would be coming right at him, so he had made sure his soldiers were in the best defensive positions they could construct. Buildings were reinforced with sandbags. Claymore mines were positioned where there was a building overhang or a likely approach to a building or position. Stairwells were booby-trapped and wire strung down the stairs. Sectors of fire and range markers were designated and emplaced. From his position, he could see dust clouds approaching, but no vehicles as yet. He prayed that the Tau weapons systems of the battalion would take out the tanks before they reached his position. He understood his priority of fires for the Dragons was air defense systems first, BTR-80 vehicles second. His biggest fear at the moment was the enemy artillery, which he had no chance of engaging and trusted that someone above his pay grade was wired in to take care of that threat. Gator 6, Rabbit 1, over, the first platoon leader was calling. Rabbit 1, Gator 6, go, Captain Hilliard responded. Gator 6, my OP1 reports vehicles to his front. Reports 2 Zulu Sierra uniforms 2-3 approaching TRP-3. Over. Rabbit 1, roger. Contact Thunder 1 and engage, Captain Hilliard directed. Turning to his fire support officer, he said, Bob, we have vehicles approaching TRP-3. Rabbit is calling the mortar platoon. Can we get some arty on that point too? I'm on it, sir, his FSO said, and began making a request of fire. As the TRPs had all been passed to the artillery battery already, it didn't take long to bring the guns to bear. In the distance to their rear, they could clearly hear 5 105mm howitzers fire, followed by what sounded like a freight train passing overhead. The forward observer with Rabbit was adjusting the fire, and on the second volley called for fire for effect. The effect was devastation, as both ZSU-23-4 air defense guns were hit. Colonel Anderson watched as the 2 anti-aircraft vehicles were destroyed. At this point, he was concerned about the enemy's artillery, which consisted of some excellent guns from South Africa and the Soviet Union. The most worrisome piece was the Al-Fau artillery that had originally been designed in South Africa. It had a range of 35 miles and fired a 210mm projectile, slightly larger than the U.S. 8-inch self-propelled artillery found at the corps levels. Thankfully, its rate of fire was low at 2 rounds per minute. He wanted to find the artillery and destroy it quickly. One of the missions for the Cav squadron was to find the artillery and direct TAC air on their positions. His other concern was the size of the advancing force. His brigade of light infantry was facing a division of motorized infantry. In theory, the attacking force must have a 3-to-1 advantage over the defender. Anderson's brigade was facing 3-to-1 odds, and a motorized enemy at that. However, the weight of the 2 attack helicopter battalions and the cavalry squadron tipped the balance back to a more level field. He also had the advantage of conducting a delay through very difficult terrain for the motorized force. If he could just keep the attacking artillery off his positions, he felt they could hold. Sabre 6, Strike 6, over. Strike 6, Sabre 6, over. Sabre 6, I need you to concentrate on going deep and find his artillery. Once you do, hit it with whatever you have. Artillery, airstrikes, your gunships. We have to knock it out. How copy? Over. Strike 6, Sabre 6, good copy. Going deep now. With that, Sabre 6 began contacting his 3 troops of 7 attack helicopters and 3 little birds. Each troop had the AH-1F Cobra gunship and OH-58 light observation aircraft. All Sabre elements, Sabre 6, over. Annihilators 6, over. Headhunters 6, over. Condor 6, over. This is Sabre 6. We are looking for his artillery locations. Once you find them, report and adjust artillery or request airstrikes. Annihilators, I want you to screen the east side of the engagement area. Headhunters, screen the west side. Condors remain in rearm refuel, and be prepared to relieve either annihilators or headhunters. Any questions? Over. Annihilators, good copy on the go. Headhunters understand and Wilco. Condors are standing by. Sabre 6, good hunting, out. Colonel Anderson had monitored the communications between Sabre 6 and his troops, and felt some relief knowing that there was an active search underway to find the enemy artillery. Now the question was whether the Cav would find that artillery before it began pounding the infantry positions. MG Zogby could not take it any longer following behind his regiments, and ordered his staff car to take him to the lead regiment. As they drove south, the carnage inflicted on his regiments was obvious, as the driver was driving around and bypassing burning vehicles. When they reached the mountain passes, the driver had to slow to a crawl to avoid the damaged vehicles blocking the road. Finally, he reached the rear of the trailing regiment and called for it to halt while he spoke to the regimental commander. Getting out of his staff car, a BTR-80 command vehicle, he exchanged salutes with Colonel Malouf, a young officer, and a very good one. However, he was not a Muslim, but a Christian, and not considered an Iraqi as his family was from Syria, though he had been born just across the border in Iraq. If it hadn't been for these facts, he probably would have been in the Republican Guard divisions, or been a general in the Iraqi army. "Colonel, what is the status of your regiment?" Zogby demanded. "Sir, I am 80% strength in vehicles and men. My concern is for the lack of air defense around us. The American attack helicopters have done most of the damage. I am also running low on fuel," Colonel Malouf said. "Have you not been resupplied with fuel?" Zogby asked. "Oh, we topped off before the attack started, but our fuel resupply trucks are 50 kilometers behind us, and reporting the road is clogged with wrecked vehicles. We can continue, but I like to anticipate problems, and fuel will be a problem if they don't get the road cleared," Colonel Malouf explained. "That is not your problem, Colonel. That is behind you. You should be concerned with what is before you." "What is in front of me, General, is more wreckage from the 1st Regiment and the lack of fuel in the future." Malouf knew he was pressing his luck, antagonizing Zogby. "Colonel, move the wreckage out of your way and keep moving. I want all 3 regiments together when we get to the open wadi. Now move it!" Zogby stormed off and climbed back into his vehicle. "That damn Malouf is so damn smart, and he is right. If we don't get this mess cleaned up and push the fuel forward, we will die on the vine." As his driver worked his way around wrecked vehicles, they finally caught up to the trail-end elements of the 1st Regiment, the lead regiment on the right flank. He decided to just follow and let the regimental commander do his thing without interfering. Eventually, all forward movement stopped, and Zogby decided to move forward and see what was happening. He found himself entering a wide-open wadi. To the left, he could see a cluster of vehicles that appeared to be command vehicles, and he directed his driver over to them. As he approached, he recognized that both the 1st and 2nd regimental commanders were together, overlooking a map. "What now?" he thought as he stepped out of this vehicle and approached the group of officers. No one noticed his approach, so he stood back and observed. "I'm telling you we must keep the ADA weapons on the flanks," Major Smirnov was attempting to explain. "The American attack helicopters will continue to use the cover of the ridgelines to engage with their Tau and Hellfire missiles. If we move the ADA systems to the center or behind the regiments, they cannot adequately cover the front or flanks," Smirnov said with some frustration. "I understand what you're saying, Major, but in this open ground, the American close air support aircraft is the biggest threat now, and they will attack the center of our formations. We need concentrated firepower and not dispersed coverage, the 1st Regiment commander, Brigadier General Jawad, argued. Brigadier General Hashem, the 2nd Regiment commander, nodded in agreement and added, Colonel Aziz, let's move the ADA systems back into the formations. Aziz didn't know what to do at this point. He just knew it was his neck on the line. Gentlemen, I think we should do what Colonel Aziz and Major Smirnov have recommended, gentlemen, Major General Zogby interrupted. The others turned and immediately came to attention and saluted. General Jawad spoke first. General, we were just discussing the protection offered by the Air Defense Force. I know what you were discussing, General, and about to direct. Are you also taking responsibility for the results if your decision and orders are carried out by Colonel Aziz? Jawad did not answer. I didn't think so. We will continue with the employment of our air defense weapons in the manner prescribed by Colonel Aziz and Major Smirnov. What is the status of your regiments? He asked first, looking at General Jawad, although he had a fair idea based on the wreckage he had just driven past. Sir, I believe I am at 70% strength, Jawad answered. Really, Zogby said. I counted your vehicles as I drove here, and by my count, I would be surprised if you were at 50% strength. You best contact your battalion commanders and get an accurate count. He turned to General Hashem. And your strength? Sir, I am at 60% at this time, Hashem said with some embarrassment. Well, at least Colonel Malouf has a good understanding of his strength and is ready to assume the lead. You will continue the attack, and I will follow. At some point, you will turn out and hold the shoulders, and Colonel Malouf with the 3rd Regiment will continue the attack and penetrate the enemy's defense. Now can we resume this attack and stop standing here with our thumbs up our asses? Like a covey of flushed quail, the commanders grabbed their maps and returned to their vehicles, moving to position themselves in their respective regiments. They had fairly open, flat terrain to their front for about 21 kilometers before they would be forced into the rugged passes again. The lead 2 regiments stepped off together, and 3rd Regiment fell in behind the 1st Regiment on the right flank. Sabre 6, Headhunter 6, over. Headhunter 6, Sabre 6. Sabre 6 sitrep, 1 battery of Alpha artillery located at. Headhunter 6 provided the grid coordinates. They were outside the range for the division or corps artillery. Sabre 6 knew that if 1 battery was discovered, 2 other batteries would not be far removed. Roger, Headhunter, continue to observe. If you have one, the others are close by. Continue with mission, but keep eyes on the one. We are requesting TAC air. Roger, Sabre 6. Anderson heard the conversation and picked up the hand mic. Sabre 6, Strike 6, over. Strike 6, Sabre 6, over. Sabre 6, I monitored and we are requesting TAC air. We will pass them to you and Headhunter when they're on station. Over. Roger. Strike 6, understood. Major Barry, USF, in charge of the 2nd Brigade Tactical Air Control Party, was already sending the request up the chain to get some fast-mover aircraft on this target. He didn't care if it was A-10s or F-15s. At this point, he would be happy if it was a Vietnam-era Sky Raider, just something to bomb this target. Anderson continued to monitor the radios and observe the dust cloud approaching from the north. Scout teams from the infantry battalions were positioned along the hills surrounding the wadi and gave constant updates on the forward progress of the opposing force as it moved south down the wadi. From his position to the first phase line was 10,000 meters. He would wait until the advance guard was 3,000 meters before he would fire his artillery and commit the attack helicopters. The first to receive artillery fire would be those lead elements, and it would be airburst artillery, stripping away antennas and killing anyone outside the vehicles. Then the ground TOWs would open fire and destroy the ADA systems and any vehicles moving forward. At 1,000 meters, the Dragon systems would open fire as well, as would machine guns with the rifle companies. The division had just received the Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, which was mounted on a tripod. It was very effective against troops in the open and added considerable weight to the supporting M60 machine guns, especially with a range of over 2,000 meters and a sustained rate of fire of 350 grenades per minute. Simultaneously, he would release the attack helicopter battalions against the follow-on regiment, which he believed was the strongest regiment. He hoped that TAC Air would be available to engage the first two regiments. The destruction of vehicles was the paramount concern. He was confident that his infantry soldiers could hold their own if they didn't have to contend with tanks or heavy vehicles, and that was the priority for the attack helicopters. Strike 6, Sabre 6. Go ahead, Sabre 6. Strike 6, we have his artillery positions, coordinating with TAC Air now. Roger, keep me posted. Looking at Colonel Anderson, Major Barry said, Sir, I have 3 flights of F-15 and 2 flights of A-10s. The FAC is talking to Sabre and had identified the artillery positions. Good. Taking out his artillery is first priority. Then go after the main body in the wadi, Anderson said, a bit more relieved and confident. Captain Hilliard was on a rooftop observing the dust cloud approaching. He could now observe what was creating it. 2 ZSU-23-4 vehicles and 6 BTR-60 scout vehicles were approaching his position. He had 4 of the battalion's Tau vehicles in his company area, but they worked for the battalion commander and were not under his control. He had coordinated with them for sectors of fire and agreed on priority of fires. His dragons, on the other hand, were his, and he had directed them as well on priority of fires and sectors. Now it was a matter of waiting for the artillery to hit, which would signal the start of the engagement. The first artillery, however, was not outgoing, but incoming. The Al-Fau artillery rounds passed over Hilliard's positions. As they exploded on impact, the ground shook and dust rose in columns, but each round overshot his positions, for which he was thankful. It appeared that they might be shooting counter-battery fire, attempting to take out the brigade's artillery before the brigade could fire. The next sounds he heard were explosions and the rounds passing over his head, but this time they were outgoing, and the sky to his front was suddenly filled with black puffs as the rounds exploded at 100 feet above the advancing troops. Seconds later, ground Tau weapons opened from 20 different locations, impacting on direct-fire air defense vehicles first and SA-9 missile vehicles second. The ZSU-23-4 could be used in a ground defensive role, and the soldiers wanted to kill them quick. A couple of vehicles survived the initial onslaught of Taus and came to a halt. For what reason was anyone's guess, but stopping was the wrong thing to do. 10 seconds later, those vehicles were destroyed as well. Hilliard was glad that none of his positions had to fire yet. He didn't want to give away his unit's location or expend ammo unnecessarily. As things quieted down, Hilliard knew that the main body would be coming on soon. The dust clouds representing the bulk of the enemy force were still approaching. From the hillsides, he saw fleeting flashes of light as attack helicopters engaged the approaching force. In the dust, he couldn't tell what they were shooting at or hitting, but columns of black smoke mixed with the dust clouds. The freight train sound of the artillery had commenced again, sending steel rain to fall amongst the enemy. However, it was drowned out by a sound of what sounded like fabric being ripped. It came in short bursts, 3 to 5 seconds in length, almost like a brrr sound that unnerved everyone that heard it. Then he saw the source of this terrifying noise. A pair of Air Force A-10 aircraft passed over his location, firing their GAU-8 Avenger 30mm Gatling guns. The effect was almost instantaneous, as approaching vehicles were riddled with hundreds of depleted uranium rounds that tore right through their armor. What surprised Hilliard more was the fact that no anti-aircraft fire was engaging the aircraft. From where he sat, the air defense systems had been destroyed, but surely there must be more in the formation. Then again, Maybe they'd gotten lucky. MG Zogby directed his driver to place their vehicle in a low depression and stop. Naturally, when he came to a halt, the vehicles of his staff and advisors stopped. This included Colonel Aziz's vehicle. In a low crouch, Aziz ran to Zogby's vehicle. "Aziz, where the hell are your air defense systems? The Americans are pounding the lead regiments," Zogby screamed. "Sir, the ADA systems have been destroyed. They were taken out on the first salvo by those damned Americans. Only the 3rd Regiment has any air defense weapons systems left," Aziz pointed out, as an A-10 Warthog passed over his position, and everyone dove for cover. This particular A-10 hadn't fired. "Major Smirnov, what do you recommend at this point?" Zogby asked his Russian advisor. Smirnov had been following Aziz and suspected that this was going to happen. They just didn't have enough air defense weapons for the size of the American helicopter force in this area. "Sir, at this point, with the losses that we have sustained in Ada trucks, I would recommend we withdraw into the mountains and encircle ourselves with the Ada systems the 3rd Regiment has. That, or we get higher headquarters to send us a lot of air support to keep these American aircraft off our backs. If we continue the attack without proper air defense, those helicopters and now those A-10s will shred us to pieces." As Zogby discussed the situation with his staff, they hadn't caught sight of the TV-guided Maverick missile coming right at them. Finally, they all heard the rocket motor sound and looked up. The looks on their faces were recorded just as the bomb exploded.
Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another video.
In the meantime, we have plenty of reading material to keep you busy. You can find it all on our website, frontlinepublishinginc.com.